What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from across the UK and around the world on the internet. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. Now, my guest today is Reinerio Hernandez. Now, Ray and his entire family are experiencers. Now, he is currently employed as an estate tax attorney with the IRS, US Department of Treasury. Now, he was previously an adjunct professor for 6 years at the New School for Social Research and the City University of New York. He was also the director of the Center for a Sustainable Urban Environment at the City University of New York and the director of the Office of Community Environmental Planning for the City of New York. Ray currently resides with his family in Florida. Ray, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's Hernandez.
I knew I was going to get that wrong. And apologies for that.
It's easy. It's H-E-R, her, and then N-A-N, Nan, and then the last part, you can't mess it up. It's Des.
Well,
Hernandez.
Yeah. English was never my forte, especially for a dyslexic person. But
okay,
I might have to redo that. But no, it's fantastic to have you on. I was recommended you by another guest. who's been on recently as well, and your story is not unusual in the field, but I've not had many contactees on UFO contactees. Now, obviously, we've got very limited time here to go through your story, and I want to give it justice. To begin with, Rick, just tell us a bit about yourself, very briefly. I mean, you just, you had an ordinary sort of background, as as a tax assistant. Is that right, for the state?
Yeah, yeah. Right now, for the last 16 years, I've been employed as an estate tax attorney. So it's an inheritance tax, and I'm an attorney with the U.S. IRS. And previous to that, I had was a director of a research program, environmental research program at the City University of New York, and I had worked as an adjunct professor at the University of New York and at the New School for Research. And previous to that, I was a Ph.D. candidate at the University of California, Berkeley, Department of Urban Planning, and I had a master's from Cornell, so I do have an academic background. And so I was just a regular person. Had no background in UFOs, the paranormal, ETs, or anything like that until March of 2012, when I got hit over the head. My wife did, and eventually my daughter, by these ETs.
Okay, so you all had an amazing initial experience. So, okay, let's just go into what this experience was then for the audience.
Surely. Our dog, 16 years old, had a stroke the night before at 8 o'clock. My wife was praying all night. And then early in the morning, she was visited by what can be described as a small craft inside our living room, roughly 2 feet wide by 3 feet in height. And then she was very concerned and called me. And she walked down the stairs in front of me. And then right in front of my eyes, she and the dog disappeared. And then I was basically put to sleep. I don't know how much time I was out. And then when I awoke, my wife was already had reappeared, and the dog was totally cured. Before, she was an old dog, 16 years old, with arthritis and barely able to walk well, and now she was running around like a little puppy. And what I saw was something different. What she saw, what I saw, was a floating plasma being. I call it a being because it did control my mind, and it was sort of rectangular in shape, roughly 2 to 2.5 feet wide, by about a foot in height, pure plasma energy, multicolored, floating 4 feet off the ground. And that was the very first initial experience. That was May 4th, 2012.
Okay, so now prior to this, a bit of an atheist, would you say, in a sense? You just did not.
Total atheist.
Yeah.
Total atheist. My wife was born in Mexico, grew up Catholic, and she literally had to drag me to church. I had no conception of spirituality. And then both my wife and my daughter had numerous experiences, both seeing crafts, entities, and also paranormal experiences. Tons of paranormal experiences.
And how long ago was this?
Then converted. Oh, it's still happening. It was still happening, but most of the intense contact experiences were for the first 18 months.
And this, okay,
and again, we can't go into your show all the details, but it's just been one thing after another. After this initial experience, my wife began to see huge UFO crafts. When she was in Mexico, for example, there were 4 events in Mexico. Two of those events were witnessed by many individuals, mostly her family members, and crafts very up close. And then one time, she saw these 3 entities with white hoods, human-looking entities with white monk's robe floating right in front of her for about 15 to 20 seconds, and then they disappeared. So it's and then later on, then my experiences started. It was just that first incident in our house, but then 6 months later, I basically called down a UFO just for, not that serious about it. And this football stadium craft appeared literally 5 feet from the roof of my house.
Yeah.
And then I heard a little voice, it was my daughter's voice, saying, Daddy, you and Mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you guys see a UFO, you call me. So immediately in my head, I called down my daughter, and she was just recently turned 10 years old, which is not logical. But we saw this thing literally 30 feet away from us for about 45 minutes. And then there were also three other witnesses, friends of ours, that came during the middle of all of this. So we did have a total of 5 people, seeing this thing. And again, it was mind control during all of this event. I won't go into the details because it just takes a long time. But your consciousness is deeply affected during these close personal interactions. And it's not like you're rationally thinking and interacting.
No, absolutely not. And wow. Okay. Now, when you had this first experience when the dog wasn't very well, you're saying that whatever came into was it the front room where this experience happened?
It just popped into our living room.
Yeah.
And again, my wife had called me because she had seen like a little upside down U craft with 2 lights blinking, and at that point she went upstairs. She wasn't scared, but she went upstairs and started calling me. And when I got downstairs, right almost before I reached the stairs, she disappeared in front of me with the dog, and I was basically put to sleep. And when I woke up, the dog was totally cured. And as a matter of fact, we were going to be putting her to sleep that afternoon.
Wow.
Because she was 16 years old, completely paralyzed, and we didn't want to make her suffer. So that was a total mind meltdown,
Absolutely.
that day.
And what is your memories compared to your wife's memories in a sense as well?
Well, she didn't see that floating plasma being like I saw it because she had disappeared. She had what is called missing time. So there was, 15 or half an hour, whatever the time I was gone. She was basically taken and in her mind, instantaneously returned. So for her mind, she walked down the stairs. Then she looked down and she saw our dog running around. And she said, oh, the angels came and cured her, and they left.
Yeah, because that would be her, I suppose, her paradigm in a sense of of what she thought it was or what she can relate it to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, she was gone. She was gone. She has no recollection for that time period. She had no recollection of me going upstairs and all that time period.
And
for her, it was all instantaneously.
Sure. And sorry, and how, this is so interesting. And how do you remember it then? Why do you think you can remember it? And how scary was that to remember it?
Well, again, it's when I saw this thing, like I told you, your mind is under control, and you don't think rationally and logically under this. What I did is I looked at it, I squinted at it, I completely forgot that my wife disappeared in front of me. I looked at that floating plasma being, I waved my hand at it, and I said, BS, okay? And then I turned around, walked up the stairs, put my hand on my chest, and instantaneously went to sleep. So that's not logical, okay? It's not rational at all. But I'm just explaining to you what happened, the facts.
Yeah.
And I guess was that they didn't want me to suffer any type of trauma over all of this. So they kind of controlled my mind a little bit. They put me to sleep. So when my wife returned and healed, the dog was completely healed, then I did go totally nuts because you have something like this happen in front of you. And you've never been exposed to any of this before. It was a mental breakdown that you go through, really.
I can only imagine. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and that's just the beginning of it.
Yeah, I mean, with no reference from it before as well in this reality.
Yeah.
How did your colleagues and friends take take with what you were saying? Was it as a pinch of salt, or did they actually believe you?
Well, we were quiet for a very long time. Quite obviously, I mean, who can you tell? So I think it was maybe more than a year before we actually told our best friends. And there was one friend that we had to tell right away, and this is the person that saw our dog paralyzed. And so when he came back and he saw that the dog was totally cured, we asked him, we told him, and he was skeptical for a bit, but he had an open mind. He did tell me that he saw a UFO years ago. So at least he had that, basis. His wife was, we're very, very, very good friends. They're our best friends. So the wife was like, she was very skeptical, but then she heard my wife tell the story. And then 6 months later, when my daughter and I saw that huge craft, she heard my daughter tell the story. So it's like the three of us can't be all crazy,
No, you're not.
And
You're not
Yeah.
crazy. No.
So then it was maybe over a year before I started to tell some of my best friends about it. And then what happened was that most of them then they had their own experiences, sightings
Yes.
of major orbs and crafts. And then like the third person had these experiences, I said, "My God, I'm like opening their doors, to some other dimension, or."
That's right.
But I don't know if you've heard that before from other people, but that's exactly what happened in our situation.
Well, this is where we're going to get into as well.
Okay.
Okay. So, how changed? Okay, so obviously, I was going to ask you there, how changed were you? But you after this first experience, you were not the same, and I guess then you were devouring a lot of material into
Oh
UFO
yes,
books and
I went
other
straight
such.
to the internet, typing UFO, ETs, paranormal, because I had no concept of this, and all it did was just confuse me more, because it
What
was
type
like
of sure? What type
outside
of
of a few programs, it was
yeah?
pure rubbish.
And what type of a person would you say you were before this first experience? Were you quite selfish, quite egotistic?
No,
No.
I was always a very giving person, kind. I was never materialistic, but I was a pure, complete atheist. Rational materialist type. And now
Hmm.
I'm the complete opposite because these entities, these beings, brought me through a series of near-death experience-like type of experiences, um, and over a 4-month period. And then after the end of these experiences, it was like a total shamanic transformation. I was a new
Yeah,
person.
yeah, absolutely. Y- yes, and had you? I mean, you're normally quite a happy person, quite content with life before this experience.
Really? Not really. I was just like a drone, doing my work, functionally moving along with life with no mission, no purpose, no full understanding of what our reality is. And now I know that I'm an eternal spiritual being, and it's not a belief; it's a knowing. If you talk to any of the people that have had near-death experiences on your show, they will tell you the exact same thing. It's not a belief; it's a knowing, an absolute knowing. You meet your higher spiritual self. You meet the consciousness reality, the multidimensional reality that we live in, and then you know for a fact that you are an eternal spiritual being, and it's a blessing to go through an experience like this. And just like I'm sure I've listened to many of your
Yeah.
guests that had NDEs, and they state the same exact thing.
Oh yes, I mean they're never the
Yeah.
same people. Absolutely not. I
Oh no,
mean,
no.
no, absolutely not. And it's difficult to put it into words as well. I think really to with concepts that we can even understand. But we'll get into this as well. Getting back to your story. I mean, okay, so you saw then there was this football-sized craft. I mean, wow. I mean, what shape was that? I mean, was it plasma? What
Well,
was it?
it was basically thousands and thousands of oblong streaks of light. The craft was approximately about 100 meters tall, 600 meters going back, and it was all white streaks of light that formed the whole shell of the craft. And inside were these white plasma movements throughout the whole craft. And it was transparent. And we were not scared. My daughter and I were not scared at whatsoever. It's like we were watching the 4th of July. And then my friend comes with his wife and his 17-year-old daughter. About 15 minutes later, that they started trying to come up with explanations. They asked me, "What is that?" And I said, damn well what this is. And they said, "No, it can't be." So they tried to explain it away. Then after like 5 minutes of them trying to explain it away, I just burst out laughing. I didn't tell them that I called down the craft, but I just started laughing. And in my head, I was talking to these entities and say, "Well, you better come up with some better stuff than this because they don't believe you." And then automatically, that light show stopped and were replaced by thousands and thousands of stars, 10 times the size of Venus. Huge stars blinking on and off throughout the whole gigantic craft. And then certain areas would be powering up. Like a certain star would like blow up and get smaller, blow up. But all throughout was all this blinking. And then without a shadow of a doubt, they knew what it was. And then they left like 10 minutes afterwards. And then what happened was my daughter and I stayed for like about another 15 minutes watching this. Again, not just being entertained. And then I felt I was being attacked by mosquitoes. And after about a minute being attacked by these mosquitoes, I grabbed my daughter's hand and I said, "Come on, Shkadet is her name. Let's go inside. These mosquitoes are killing me." And then once I got inside, a couple of minutes afterwards, she goes to me, "Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside." And it was like I woke up, like the hypnotist woke me up, and I was like, back into reality again. And that's when I realized the whole control aspect, that your whole consciousness is controlled. Just like when I was put to sleep, and went to bed, totally under control. Same thing like this. So I ran, I grabbed my camera, my video, I ran outside, and nothing was there. And that's when I realized for the first time just what it is having close contact with these entities, that you have no rationality to your thought process. Yeah.
No, that's completely that's exactly what they all say, and it's almost like it's your own personal experience. As in, if someone out there is not supposed to see it, they won't see it.
Correct. Like my friends, they came in for 10 minutes, and what I think they came was so I won't go crazy, because if you go through these experiences by yourself, I could easily see how you think you're going nuts. But in this case, something's going on with my daughter, because she's had 3 people that I've mentioned their near-death experiences personally, one-on-one, with my daughter and me right next to her. And plus she saw this huge craft. Months after, I wrote a poem about the dying world. This signature, like these, I guess these ancient language, scripts, whatever, that's how she signed it. And it's 10 years, it doesn't write a poem in the spirit world, like that, So something's going on, but just to let you know, the weirdness, at least some of the weirdness. I told you like 1% of our stories.
Yeah, no. I mean, this is really cut down stuff right now of what the experience was that you went through. Just the bare basics in a sense.
Yeah.
When you had. Well, let's ask you: have you had regression to these events? And if so, was the regression very different?
Yeah, no, we never had regression. I never took that opportunity. To me, they're modern angels, and to my wife. Initially, that's what she said, and I was, highly skeptical of it. But then I went through my own spiritual transformation with these NDE type of experiences. And Tony Woods and I, who you had on a guest, he thoroughly knows all of my experiences.
Well, let's just get into that then. I mean, you keep mentioning near-death experience. Where does that come?
Very influential experience.
Yeah. Well, have you had a near-death experience then?
Not personally, but I need to clarify so you can understand what went on. Almost immediately after I saw that huge craft, I was taken either that night or the very next night to a YouTube site where I saw a video on NDEs. And then all of a sudden, I went to Amazon and I ordered like 30 books on NDEs. Don't tell me why. Okay, there's no rationality to all of this, I'm telling you. And then for the next 4 months, I literally spent 18 hours a day reading only NDE books and an occasional book on scientific consciousness studies, the physics of consciousness studies. But it's mainly NDEs. I became an NDE expert. You name the book, I've read it, okay? Again, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had no life, no TV, no internet, no social life with my family. It was like, I need to read the next book, NDE book. And then I had never spoken with anybody about NDEs. No one. Only my wife knew about it, and she thought that I needed to go to shrink and get some medications. So on 3 days in a row, Friday, December the 21st, 2012. The next day, Saturday, December 22nd, Sunday, December 23rd. The very first 3 people I ever talked to about NDEs, I hit the lottery with each one. All of them had NDEs. The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. I won't tell her name over the air, but she's a local pediatrician here. What came out of my voice was sort of like a channeled robotic voice. And in my head, I thought I was going insane because I thought I was schizophrenic. This other being just asked the doctor, "Excuse me, doctor, have you ever heard of the term near-death experiences? I just finished reading approximately 300 books on this topic, and out of those 300 books, approximately 50 were written by medical doctors, such as yourself. So it's a phenomenon that's scientifically, validly, studied, and you need to be aware of it." So her eyeballs popped out, and in my head, I was like, trying to shut down my other schizophrenic voice, and I said, "Oh my God, I frightened this woman, I scared her, she thinks I'm nuts." So I said, "Excuse me, doctor, I apologize. I don't know why I said that, And so she said, "There's no need to apologize. How did you know I had one?" And then she went into the details of her near-death experience with my daughter next to me. Then the following day was another total stranger at church. The same robotic voice came out, and his eyeballs freaked out. And then he told me about the near-death experience of his mother, died in his arm a year before, and all the details, even seeing the paramedics walk through the door. She described the paramedics, everything, just like the doctor. Hers was just floating in the emergency room. She even went through 2 walls. For 15 minutes, she described verbatim the conversation that her parents had. She described all the people around her parents, even the doctor and the nurse that were treating her. She had a heart attack and died in the hospital and was resuscitated. Then the final day was my own man, my own father, By then I knew what was going on with these ETs, that it was a setup job. And so my father was the #1 atheist in the world. He was 83 years old, bedridden, very sick. I said, my God, I need to tell my father what's going on. This is not just books, This is for real, And so I started telling him, not the ET stuff, but obviously what happened on Friday and Saturday. He goes, that happened to me. And I go, what? Then he started telling me all his NDE experiences.
Wow.
He even had a life review.
No
He
way.
said, up there, time doesn't exist.
He had a
says, I
life
was up
review.
there at least 20 or 30 years. I said, what do you mean 20 or 30 years? Well, that's how long it took God to show me all the good things I had done in my life and all the bad things. And it showed it to me instantaneously with my mind, reliving these experiences, and the mind of the other person that he had experienced.
Now, wow.
Okay.
And you never knew that about your father until you asked him.
Never. I right there, I asked my mother, I said, Mom, you never told me about this. Is this true? Is he making this up? And she said, we only spoke about it once. That was when he was waking up from the anesthesia, from the open heart surgery. And she told him, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. And he basically told her to shut up, that he had to tell her because it was so vivid. It was 30 years of conscious, vivid memories that he had in his mind. And
how did that make you feel for him to give you that validation?
Well, I already knew something was up, before I told him. I finally put the connection, with seeing that huge craft and then me going crazy for these 4 months reading these NDE books. And then after my own father, it was like, it went straight into the heart, like the message. And then on the way home, I basically looked up in the sky and I said to God, which I now firmly know, a God creator, not a biblical God, but more of a spiritual creator.
Sure.
And to these entities, which I know exist, I said, thank you. In a 4-month period, you have managed to totally transform an atheist material rationalist into someone that has more of a knowing, not a belief, of a knowing that a creator exists, that these entities, which are like modern angels, do exist. And I thank them for it. And I still firmly believe that to this day.
Do you know that when your father recovered from his operation, do you know that had this changed him as a person? This experience that he had.
Yes. I had no idea. All I know is about many years ago he had totally changed. He was he wasn't a nice person. Always yelling and screaming, very emotional, cursing all the time. And all of a sudden, it's like he was on some antipsychotic medications. He was on a chill pill. He was a totally different person. I just thought he was getting old, that's what it was, that he had finally, slowed down, But now I know after all of this
something much greater had taken place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And he also told me, God is not a malicious vindictive God. Well, to me, I have my own personal opinion of this, that this was not God, that this was actually a higher level ET, that he interacted with. But he told me God is a God of love and a God of enseñanza, which means knowing, teaching. It's teaching and love. That's what he told me.
Wow, yeah, wow, you have been through some amazing experiences in such a short amount of time.
And then later on, Free started this organization that I'm a co-founder with through a download. I don't know if you want to go into that now or.
Well, we will, but bear with us because this is such an. There's so much to this story, so bear. So let's just concentrate a bit on why we're combining the idea of why we think the near-death experience or consciousness that's really relates to the UFO experience, because it doesn't it? And I think personally that a lot is missed out in the sense that we look at these abductions and these interactions with these ETs, and we, a lot of us would never think that they're spiritually evolved beings in a sense.
Oh God, yes.
You
Like
know,
I said, they're modern angels.
and some would say, well, why would spiritually evolved beings, abduct people? But we don't know really what the process is, and we can try to. We'll talk about maybe what that process is and why. But let's just look at this consciousness and ETs. What have you discovered?
Well, what happened following up maybe 5 months after that, I had a download. I was in the middle of a traffic jam, and I was taken out of body, like in a matrix type of reality. I was floating, and around me was floating a wheel. The wheel had various spokes, and inside these spokes were various what I call contact modalities. Okay, like for example, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, channeling, ETs, the spirit world, all of that, hallucinogenic journeys, that type of thing, all mystical meditation, all mechanisms where humans can pierce the veil, so to speak. And then each of these different segments was in one of the spokes, and it was all floating around me. I was inside the wheel. What was holding everything together was consciousness. And then what came down in my head was an instant message. It wasn't like a voice. It was just an instant knowing that I have to tell humanity of the relationship between these beings, the spirit world, and consciousness. Okay? And it said that there's two components that I'm going to need help. And this is not about money. And we need individuals that are minimum to no ego to help out with this. And then that same evening, I got an email from Mary Rodwell responding to an email that I had sent her 7 months ago. And she stated that she just got that email that day. Okay? It was like somehow it was held up in some type of matrix reality for 7 months, and then it just popped up on her screen. So if you ever do interview Mary Rodwell, you can ask her that. She can verify it. Then the next morning, after I chatted with Mary over Skype, because she was fascinated by all the things that have been happening to me, then I got an email from Dr. Rudy Shields, one of the world's leading astrophysicists, experts on consciousness, expert on black holes. He's a 75-year-old emeritus professor from Harvard, and his theory is that these black holes are actually the source of the Akashic fields, the source of consciousness in our galaxy. Because he actually studied these black holes scientifically through various um, 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 what do you call it? Those telescopes, those huge telescopes worldwide.
Yep.
And he did the first actual telescope studies, numerous telescopes with different instruments. And what he found out that these black holes, information just does not disappear, through some wormhole or somewhere outside. No, that it's actually like a hard drive. Information is being compressed, and stored like a hard storage device. So what he says is that these black holes are actually the neurons of God's brain, and that you could tap into that information through zero-point energy that Dr. Edgar Mitchell had described in his various physics and consciousness papers, describing the quantum hologram theory of physics and consciousness. So then he told me, write down this telephone number. After we spoke for 90 minutes. Remember, he called me. I didn't call him. And I found out later it was Mary Rodwell that sent him an email because he is a consciousness expert, and I did get a physics download associated with this. And so he said, write down this telephone number, and I wrote it down. And he says, this is a telephone number of my mentor. So in my head, I said, who in the hell is his mentor? One of the world's leading, geniuses. He goes, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And so I finally called Dr. Edgar Mitchell 4 hours later, and he invited me to his house the very next day. And then at his house, pretty much free was formed with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Rudy Shield from Harvard, and Mary Rodwell and myself. And so just to let you know how craziness of all of this, and in my opinion, everything was all orchestrated by these modern angelic beings.
Well, that would be the way to look at it, wouldn't it? And could you say as well that, well, I'd have your view on this, that with these beings, that potentially the veil is a lot less. And what I mean by that, for those who may not understand, is that they're remembering of who they truly are, that there may be potentially a soul and a body, and that they've come from a place called home. They'll go back to that place, and they have a life purpose as well. That veil is a lot less than the veil that we have as human beings, as an incarnation, as a human being.
Yeah, again, I cannot tell you about my own personal experiences because I've never had one-on-one interaction with these beings. A lot of my experiences after we saw that huge craft have just been these synchronistic setup jobs. Like I told you, if you get that situation I just told you and you multiply that by 10, then you'll get an idea of what my experiences have been like.
Yeah.
It's not like a lot of people that are actually interacting with a being in many different ways. But I personally believe, after speaking with hundreds of experiencers, and again, that's one of the things that we're doing with Free. We're working with experiencers of UFO-related ET contact experiences, and my hypothesis now is that these beings are spiritually awakening us. Basically, so we don't kill each other. We're pretty much at the brink of destruction. Our world for many
Yes.
different ways.
Yes. Yes.
We've got the trigger on the nuclear bombs all over the world. We've got now the nuclearization of space with all these space weapons, and we're at a break from destroying ourselves.
Yes, past people I've interviewed, especially people like Dolores Cannon, who I've got such utmost respect for, would say that we've gone through the worst of times, and potentially we have, but that doesn't. I still see a world that's in a lot of pain right now, and that this is almost like a nursery school where the lowest of consciousness seems to go to. If you want a low consciousness experience, then you're having it now. It seems to be like. I mean, I'm sure we all can grow. We can escape that. That consciousness.
Well, we need the negative and the positive in order to grow.
Of course.
Dr. Mitchell did actually write a paper many, many years ago about the dualistic nature of our reality, which has spiritual implications, which I don't know, I don't need to go into details, about it. But I certainly believe that, humans are here to be taught. But at this point, our role as humans here is at the brink of utter destruction. And I think they've come really to awaken us spiritually, I think,
yes.
To go to the next level.
Yes, I've had all sorts of people on, and I remember, a lot of the people always talk about Roswell being a pinnacle time when there was a lot of UFO traffic, in a sense, and this was, due to, or just prior to Roswell as what it was occurring, due to us having the nuclear devices, and we are still now unaware that the effects that these nuclear devices have in other realities. And potentially parallel universes, it ripples off into that when we set one off.
Yeah, I firmly believe that a lot of experiencers have gotten that type of quote-unquote download information. And all you need to look is where we have the majority of the nuclear power plants on the east coast of the U.S. All you need is a massive upheaval in the Canary Islands or in the Azores, which we know is all volcanic shifts. Well, it's going to be creating a huge, gigantic tidal wave. And we're going to have Fukushimas all around through the east coast of the U.S. And that's just through nuclear catastrophes. I'm not talking about through self-destruction, through nuclear bombs and war and things of that sort.
No.
Ecological pollution and unsustainable growth of humanity.
I think it is true though what you said just a bit that there is a duality here, and that consciousness is here to grow as well, and to discover itself, and to remember itself, and to be of purpose. So as much as we do things the hard way, as you say, there is probably a greater reason for our being here. Yeah. And I would also say that yes, that these beings, these ETs, are very spiritually evolved, and that they're here to help us, in a sense. And when you look at films like the Ridley Scott's new Prometheus 2 that starts production next year, it's all going to be about, our origins, where we came from. And it's interesting that a lot of these films are now making it into, from sci-fi, into sci-fi, the idea what Eric von Daniken, presented decades ago.
Sure. I mean, we need to get away from the Steven Spielberg's E.T. or the destruction of the worlds, type of scenarios, and really focus what the majority of experiencers are going through, and that is that abductions is just a small component of this. It's not really firmly understood, but the vast majority of people that are having UFO-related ET contact are non-abductees, and also, and very very important, that the this phenomenon of ET contact is, according to the physicists that we have in our group, it's all interrelated to consciousness and all the modalities of contact. And that's what's seldomly discussed, how all of this is interrelated. If I can give you, regarding a topic on NDEs, we found that there was a huge number of experiencers of UFO related contact that have had out of body experiences, a huge number. We cannot discuss the details because we're still doing our survey for our research study. And a little plug here for experiencers. You can go to experiencer.org, and we do have a survey which is completely anonymous for individuals that have had UFO related contact experiences. But another corollary that we found was a huge percentage of these individuals have had near death experiences. Okay. And then when you add that to the transformation of these experiencers, like for example, the changes I've made, it was like 85% of them had these major type of experiences, becoming very, very spiritual, less materialistic, less egotistical, more caring about the environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These huge transformations of the experiencers. So when you put all of that together, it puts a different limelight of the ET contact experience. It's not what Hollywood has been portraying, or the internet.
Yes, absolutely, and then I've had lots of other people on as well who talk about that these beings may not be from other, they may be from interdimensional travel in a sense. So when we see a space
Oh yes,
that's
yes.
empty now, it could be occupied in another dimension by a building or something else. So when people have had abductions and say they've been taken to other planets in our solar system, well, in an interdimensional travel, those planets could have life on.
Sure, sure. The hypotheses of most of the members of our board of directors, and you can see the list of the board of directors at experiencer.org, who they are. But almost everyone has a hypothesis that they indeed are interdimensional. They're not ET. They're not, extraterrestrial. And Edgar Mitchell and Dr. Rudy Shields were stated earlier, basically geniuses among geniuses. Both are adherents to the quantum hologram theory of physics and consciousness, which states that we live in a dimension is not really a word, but in a multi-dimensional type of reality, and that these ETs are part of that reality, just like the spirit world is sort of like another type of dimension. And then there is advanced physics that explain that. If anyone just sends an email, because we're building a website right now, but send us an email to the email that's listed in Experiencer. You'll see a link there, and request to be sent some materials by Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Rudy Shield on the multi-dimensional aspects of our reality and how that relates to ET contact, and I could send you those documents.
Isn't that incredible? When you look at a lot of these UFO researchers, the majority won't touch the idea that these could be spiritually evolved beings, because that's kind of it doesn't sell maybe. Yeah, but I think we've
Well,
really.
it's the hypotheses that the vast majority of our members have.
Yeah, well, it's where it's going now because if for a lot of people, it's having if this is the way that it potentially could be, yeah, this reality that they are from interdimensional, they are spiritually advanced. This could be people's first wake up call to look at the ET subject. It could be the most easily. Aspect of the whole doors that it opens up when you look into these subjects.
Yeah, I think it will totally change, uh, certainly the fields of ufology, and also the field of the paranormal, and also the field of consciousness studies. Because right now, most of the academic debate on consciousness deals with the brain. And almost all of the members of our board of directors firmly believe that consciousness, does not begin and end with the brain. That we indeed are spiritual beings. And Edgar's quantum hologram theory of consciousness provides a good groundwork for that, at least to begin to scientifically understand this process. This will totally rock numerous arenas. And I think that we are actually on the cutting edge to opening up a lot of new doors, integrating science and spirituality.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's really validating metaphysics because metaphysics have discussed many of these concepts of quantum physics. And now quantum physics is actually taking it to the next step and merging spirituality with this. So it's really at the cutting edge.
Yeah, yeah, yep, absolutely, and not to be scared, because some people think these are demonic and all that. My views on religion nowadays is that I think, as we consciously evolve and become more aware and conscious, basically, you maybe move out of the paradigm of religion. I think sometimes, to me, it seems like religion is the lowest form of an unevolved consciousness, in a sense, one that's not
Yeah,
has a heavy veil.
I agree with you. To me, religion is putting you in a shoebox. And yet we are infinite beings, not only in this universe, multi-dimensional reality. And so when you compare that to a little tiny box you're put in, it's very restrictive. So again, I don't want to get into religious debate with
No,
folks
no,
because I
no.
know a lot of my friends are very religious folks. Most of them in the Catholic Church. But I do have this conversation. As a matter of fact, yesterday I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. Her husband had died 9 months ago, and another little coincidence: on his deathbed, the day before his on his dying bed, I sat him and her together. Well, he was already in bed. He was dying of cancer. He only had one day to live. So I sat both of them. I said, "Has anyone spoken to you about death?" And they said no. So here's this fellow was in the hospital with cancer for 2 weeks, and no one even spoke to him about death. And so I said, okay, let's just sit down. We're going to talk about death. And again, it's not a coincidence. That morning, I met with this other individual, an 89-year-old man. He told me about his near-death experience. And that was a setup job for my friend who was dying of cancer. So I told him all again my experiences with the NDE literature, which he already knew, and then told him what happened that morning. So when he died very, very peacefully. Based upon this very lengthy conversation I had with his wife about death, the spirit world, near-death experiences. And I think near-death experiences can be used as a tool for the dying, just like Damien Brinkley does with his hospice work, and also as a tool to educate humanity to become more spiritual. Because once you realize that you're having an out-of-body experiences, for example, not even a death experience, at that moment you realize that, man, I'm not body, I'm actually spirit. So if we can publicize these things more, it'll
Yes,
totally change the
yeah.
paradigm of humanity.
Absolutely, and and I'm not anti-religious. I'm just my issue with anything like this is that if we could just see that we're all one, that we all come from the same energy, that there is no better persons or weaker people. We are all, our consciousness is all from the same
Yeah,
collective.
we're all from the same source.
As
We're
absolutely,
all from the same source,
and there is
and we're all
no.
interconnected.
Yes, then who cares if we come from different religions? We're still the same.
Can I tell you a little story about that same topic, Mr. Moore?
Sure.
I met this man, and again, this is again one of these crazy stories. And this individual's name is Ezekiel Hernandez. Remember, I told you about the wheel, the experience I had inside the wheel, Ezekiel's wheel, and then he has my same last name. And then we were talking about. I said that humanity's going to take 1,000 years before we eliminate all categories of man, race, class, culture, whatever, so we're just humans, And he says, no, we're not going to wait 1,000 years because right around us is an ET mothership filled with thousands of ETs. They're awaiting us right now. Okay, and this is a 75-year-old Cuban elderly man that he was waiting to take a salsa classes, okay, in Miami that I brought my daughter to. So it's these types of crazy experiences, And then, as a matter of fact, he had three NDEs, and he made the connection between ETs and NDEs because he had a heart transplant, and where he had his last NDE, and in that heart transplant, he described instead of having like a normal NDE like he had the other 2 times, he went straight into a huge mothership where all these beings were greeting him, patting him on the back. Ezekiel, Ezekiel, welcome, welcome. And he was like, who are these people? I don't even know them, you know? So it's like a merging of the ET contact phenomenon and the NDEs. And I never heard that before. And so that's another reason of why it's like it's put in your face. So you can constantly see this interconnection.
Yes, yes.
And I wrote up an article about it. I'll send it to you later on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that as well, Ray. Thank you. I mean, when you look at it, if from a perspective, shall we say, perspective that, if these are interdimensional beings, and if our soul is, transitions to other dimensions, then maybe we are all going to the same place, or maybe there are probably infinite dimensions to go to. It's these are the questions that'll be going on for all of time. But if we're all going to the to these different dimensions, and they may not be connected dimensions, but dimensions upon dimensions, then surely it seems like consciousness would transition as well. But just very quickly as well, what is now your purpose, your mission as well, seeing as you've gone through all this experience?
Well, my mission is really to develop free, which is to be able to study this phenomenon, because there's no information about it on the internet. It's just hogwash about people that have had contact, UFO-related contact experiences, and then to try to merge this with other types of contact modalities that people have tried. I think Dr. Rich Stroxman's study on DMT stated that 50% of the people that had smoked DMT actually had conscious conversations with a sentient being, NDEs, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing. So we want to be able to compare all of these modalities together to see what are the commonalities, to try to study this scientifically. And again, there's concerns because by a lot of people because of the black ops or the government might want to be interested in the experiencer phenomenon, but it's all completely anonymous. Everything that we're doing, we don't ask for any personal information for our survey whatsoever. There's nothing there to be able to identify who you are. So it's an attempt to try to study this academically, scientifically, and we do have 5 retired PhD academics in our group, together with 4 of the leading researchers in this field that have been working with experiencers. So that's my mission, because maybe it's the bad mission, but that's the download I got. I need to tell humanity the relationship between the ETs, the spirit world, and consciousness. Maybe I'm on the wrong track, but that's my mission. What they told me.
I think you're following your gut feeling. I think you're following your passion. I really do, and what you probably came here to do as well. This was just your wake up call, just to make sure that this door's open for you. And do you want to take it? Well, you've chosen to. So it's a bit late now in a sense as well.
It was a 2x4 over my head. That was very difficult.
Well, there's many other experiences that you've had as well. And one thing I wanted to ask you is, there seems to be an awful lot of footage captured in Mexico. Why are Mexicans having so much experience, do you think?
Well, that's very interesting that you stated that, because we're doing our survey in 3 languages. We're doing it in English, French, and Spanish. And there are major differences between the findings that we're getting between Latin America, or I wouldn't say Latin America, with the Spanish language survey and the English language survey. And again, it's only speculation at this point, but it seems like in Latin America, it's openly discussed. There's no fear base whatsoever. In Latin America, for example, people were not aware of Bud Hopkins, David Jacobs, all this fear-based, that guy from the UK that talks about the reptilians, David Icke, that sort of thing. That's not, widespread down there in Latin America. And just like in my wife's family, they openly talk about seeing UFOs and spirit beings and things like that. It's widely discussed. So I think it's how you perceive these things, how we're reality, and they might open themselves out to more spiritually enlightened people. But if you see these things as devils and demons, you're not going to be getting that type of a contact, I think.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you mentioned David out there. I mean, I think David would say as well that there are good and bad, and I think he's just, he focuses on the bad ones that have tried to infiltrate, humanity. I mean, look, who knows? I mean, if there was I'm sure there has to be a yin and yang. I'm sure there does. But I mean, Dolores Cannon always talked about. She always talked about that they were kept away, the bad ones. Dolores Cannon also talked about that, that we've all had lives on different planets, and maybe when someone like yourself has an experience as amazing as you have done, and I fully believe that you've had this experience as well, that they've come to see you because of a past life connection that you've had, and this was a bit of a wake up call for you to be on your mission. I mean, has that come across as well in the research, in the sense? I know you can't talk about it too much.
We did ask that question. Yeah, sure. We did ask these types of questions in our phase 2 survey. We focused a lot about connections between the spirit world, reincarnation, how they view their reality, that sort of thing. And it was a very, very high percentage of people that took that survey did make that connection between their ET contact experiences and the quote-unquote spirit world, pre-birth, post-death, reincarnation. There's a very, very strong correlation there. We just don't understand it, obviously, but at least this is what experiencers are getting. Who knows if it's coming subliminally through downloads or whatever, but that connection certainly is there.
Yes, yeah. Now, I know, look, we will get you back on to talk about the results, in the future.
After December 1st, we can talk about the actual preliminary data.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we've run out of time here, unfortunately, and it's and we've barely covered it, and I'm sorry that we didn't get more into
it's a fraction.
Oh, a fraction, especially the other contactee story that of your own experience that you've got. Yeah. But Ray, I mean, if you were to try to summarize what you've been through, the work and everything else, what would you say is maybe one of the most important or an important message coming from the ETs in a sense?
Let me give you that message. It's actually two very brief messages, and it comes from Edgar Mitchell. Okay, and to me, they're like messages to my heart. First of all, Edgar always states that humanity is at the brink of destruction, that humanity needs to be awakened spiritually, and that we need to try to establish relations with these entities, just like we establish relations with our neighbor next door, because we might just need them in the future if we're at a brink of destruction. So that's the first lesson, which I totally agree. The second lesson, and that Edgar always tells me, he says, Ray, we just know the equivalent of 1 grain of sand in an entire beach. And that is just one beach in a multiverse of beaches. So in other words, we know squat about what's going on, and we have to maintain that perspective. That not like so many people in the internet, like I know it all. I've got all the clues, I've got all the secrets. I agree with Edgar's perspective, and all the members in our free board also agree with that perspective, that we know almost nothing about what's going on. We're just in infant stages, and that everyone has to keep an open mind, including myself.
And me as well. All of us do. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ray, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a really, really interesting interview. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to my dear friend Tony Woody, who's had NDEs, out-of-body experiences, UFO-related contact. It's very real, folks out there. And it could happen to a trained military officer, and myself, a tax attorney. It could happen to anyone. So thank you for your support and your wonderful shows, Mr. Moore.
Well, we've come to an end on today's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.